Crazy idea. What if more pitchers should be moving on the rubber based on the handedness of hitter that they're facing? You might hear this occasionally in relation to getting a pitcher out of a funk. They move him to a different spot on the rubber and now all of a sudden he's better. But I'm talking more drastic. I'm talking flip-flopping between spots on the rubber based on the handedness of hitter that's at the plate. In this video, we're going to dig into horizontal approach angle, how it all relates to Paul Skenes, and play around with this crazy idea. And just to give you another visualization of what this idea is, I think it's pretty simple. I'll map it out for you. A right-handed pitcher is on the mound, and a right-handed hitter steps into the box. This is their spot on the rubber. The next batter comes up. He's a left-handed hitter, and this right-handed pitcher now moves over to this spot on the rubber. Right-handed hitter comes up after that lefty, and the pitcher moves back to that original spot. Does anybody in the majors do this currently? I found two pitchers that adjusted their spot on the rubber by over 1 foot based on the hitter's handedness. That was Matt Strahm and Chase Anderson. And then a third who adjusted more subtly by only about 6 inches based on the handedness of hitter, and that was Aaron Savali. But neither of those guys are as cool or as interesting as Paul Skenes, so Skenes is who we will focus on in this video. But first, to fully appreciate this concept, we unfortunately have to do a bit of education on a topic known as HAA, or horizontal approach angle. I know, math, it's intimidating, but hang with me. A while back I did a video on vertical approach angle. This is the same concept, just flipped to a different plane. It's now horizontal. What HAA is measuring is the angle that the ball travels out of hand relative to the pitcher's release point. And we can show this visually. Let's say a pitcher releases the ball from here, we draw our straight line, and then based on the resulting location of that pitch, we can calculate this tiny angle out of hand. That is the horizontal approach angle of the pitch. The average sweeper from a right-handed pitcher, for example, has an HAA of negative 4.2 degrees. Let's say that same pitcher, after throwing the sweeper, follows it up with a sinker, a different pitch, but same idea. He maintains his release point, we draw our straight line out of hand, and look at the location of the pitch to calculate that angle. We'll say this is like negative 0.5 degrees for the sinker as opposed to the 4.2 from the sweeper. The key thing for me that it was tough to understand is that the angles are not just telling you glove side or arm side movement. So even though the average right-handed sinker is moving arm side and the average sweeper is moving to the glove side, technically in opposite directions, their angles are both negative numbers on average because of where they're released from. Like vertical approach angle, horizontal approach angle is heavily influenced by a couple variables. The first being the horizontal location of that pitch in the strike zone, and then the second being the pitcher's horizontal release point. So much so that the really good baseball mind Alex Chamberlain actually wrote a pretty seminal piece on this at FanGraphs recently, which is the basis for most of the information in this video, to create an adjusted horizontal approach angle, or adjusted HAA. Essentially what he's doing is trying to figure out, relative, for example, to sweepers, which sweeper has the sharpest angle, or relative to sinkers, which sinker has the sharpest arm side angle. I'll link to it in the details of this video. It's a bit dense, but any topic this complex is going to take some time to understand. Put simply, HAA alone helps us understand which pitches are approaching the plate at sharper angles than another pitch type. Is this slider approaching the plate sharper, or is this cutter approaching the plate sharper? How about this slider versus this four-seam fastball? Chamberlain's adjusted HAA tells us relative to other sweepers which sweeper has, on average, a sharper angle, say away from a right-handed hitter or into a left-handed hitter. One of the primary takeaways is that after controlling for release and location, sharper angles toward the hitter create a higher rate of swings on the inside edge of the plate and a lower rate of swings on the outside edge of the plate. The example here is a classic sinker jammed inside from a right-handed pitcher to a right-handed hitter. That hitter decides to swing, thinking the pitch is on the inside edge of the plate, but that pitch's angle is sharper than he expects going in on his hands, and the ball is actually off the plate inside, but it's too late and he's already swung. And now we can finally get to the cool stuff. Paul Skenes last year at LSU moved on the rubber based on the handedness of hitter he was facing, and he continued to do this in the small sample of pitches we have from his first appearance in pro ball with the Pirates. He stands on the first base side versus right-handed hitters and more on the third base side versus left-handed hitters. Why? Well, he told us, and he said it has to do with how his pitches tunnel. I won't read the whole quote here, but that was essentially my takeaway. Tunneling is an odd concept to me. It's used a lot, and I often think we glaze over the nuance of it that makes it a lot more complex of a topic than it initially appears. Tunneling is often thought of as making pitches look the same for as long as possible on their way to the plate before breaking off in different directions. And I think that's what most people would say it is. But tunneling runs counter to what breaking pitches grade out the best in stuff models. Big, sweepy breaking balls that are thrown hard generally grade out as the best pitches. And yet, per tunneling, these pitches generally break off from a pitcher's fastball line earlier than, say, a shorter gyro slider that doesn't have as much movement to the glove side and does not grade as well on a stuff model. So shouldn't the pitch that holds the fastball line longer be better per tunneling? And wait, doesn't that really just mean we're talking about location too? If pitches are further apart when they get to the zone, they're inherently going to be further at different points in ball flight. Are we just talking about command when we're talking about tunneling? So tunneling is wrong? I don't think so, but you could see the issue, right? That's all to say, I don't think Skenes is incorrect in what he's saying. It would be wild for me, an internet baseball nerd, to say that the number one pitching prospect in baseball is wrong about anything. I just think his rubber move is also taking advantage of his unique fastball's horizontal approach angle. Skenes' fastball is odd. It's a four-seam fastball, but it has a ton of run. In low A last year, it averaged 98 miles per hour with 11 inches of induced vertical break and 15 inches of arm side run. He's a very east-west pitcher, which are the kinds of pitchers where horizontal approach angle matters most. Remember, sharp angles toward a hitter create swings. A running four-seam is inherently going to have a sharper angle into a right-handed hitter than a carry four-seam that doesn't have as much of that arm side run. So by Skenes throwing from the first base side of the rubber versus right-handed hitters, he's essentially creating a sharper angle towards the hitter with his super runny four-seam fastball. If he was on the third base side versus righties, throwing to that same inner edge, the HAA on the pitch wouldn't be as sharp towards the hitter. An angle that's becoming less negative is sharper towards the hitter. And by moving to the third base side versus left-handed hitters, I think he's playing with his sliders performance a bit. Sharp angles towards the hitter on the inner edge induce swings. Because we're flipping handedness here, when that angle increases or becomes more negative, it is getting sharper. And for Skenes, that means it will hopefully result in more slider swings on the inner third of the plate, or perhaps this means some backdoor takes on sweepers, using the idea that sharp angles toward a hitter on the outer edge create takes. The thing I'm going to point out here, and you may have already realized this, is that Chamberlain's research has to do with adjusted horizontal approach angle. And I'm applying what Paul Skenes is doing on the rubber move that I just showed you to just horizontal approach angle, not the adjusted version, perhaps for the sake of simplicity. But remember, an adjusted horizontal approach angle, you're controlling for that release point. So that means if Skenes moves on the rubber and holds everything else constant, his HAA would change, but his adjusted HAA wouldn't. That's confusing, I know. What I really think this gets at is that both HAA and adjusted HAA have value in different ways. HAA for understanding why different pitch types work in different spots of the zone and what they create in terms of swings, discipline, and contact. And adjusted HAA for understanding why one sweeper is sharper than another sweeper, or one sinker is sharper inside to a right-handed hitter than another sinker. Because regular old, not adjusted HAA is so dependent on location, what we might really be talking about with that metric is just confirming that a pitcher needs to throw to a certain spot with a pitch that moves a certain way. And if it requires adjusting your spot on the rubber to get that location, then so be it. I asked a few coaches for their thoughts on this idea, and I heard a really common response. I don't think I'd be able to get my guys comfortable throwing from two spots on the rubber, which is a totally fair point. Comfort in pitching is paramount. But I did like one thing a coach brought up. He said that he thought there was so much variability in training, right? Pivot picks, different arm slots, pull downs, etc., variability, taking reps at shortstop as a pitcher, athleticism. He thought guys were already predisposed to accept something like a rubber move change more naturally because of that variation in training. So he liked the idea, even though he admitted it might be taboo for them to actually bring it into game. He thought guys were prepared for it. Another idea I heard from coach, or more so a comment, was he said that my guys can't command from one spot on the rubber. What makes you think they'd be able to command from two spots on the rubber? And I said that's a totally fair point, but most relievers in the first place don't have command. So I don't see why that would really matter, right? If he doesn't have command from one spot and he's still reasonably good, why not move him to two spots? He doesn't have command at either spot. His stuff's really good, and he gets these marginal advantages on the edges. So this idea has evolved, right? It's gone from me thinking that every pitcher should be moving based on every handedness, either handedness that comes up into the box. And then it's kind of changed into, well, okay, maybe just guys who are east-west should be moving based on the handedness of hitter in the box. Now it's kind of finished at this point that we have, where I think it's every reliever who's more east-west should probably be moving on the rubber based on the handedness of hitter that they're facing. And that's, I think, where I'm going to leave this video and kind of plant my flag, because I like that idea. I don't really think in the first place relievers have a ton of command. I think getting out of your comfort zone by moving around to pick up these marginal gains on the edges, especially if you have some run and some sweep, is really important from a horizontal approach angle standpoint. I hope you learned something in this video and kind of understand horizontal approach angle. I will admit, a lot of this concept took a while for me to digest, and I used Alex Chamberlain's piece a lot. So perhaps there's some information here that might be slightly off. If you notice any of that, I'm in the comments. I'm super receptive to feedback on this video, but I do think I hit on some of the key points here. And I still love the idea that you should be moving on the rubber, maybe if you're a reliever, and maybe if you're a more east-west reliever. As always, thank you for watching.